So in this video, I'm chatting with Edmund Smith Jr., Ed, and Jane Masterson, who are on their own journey with Parkinson's. Jane as the person with PD and Ed as her caregiver, and have quite a bit of helpful information to share from their experiences over the years that we hope others can benefit from. So with that, we'll get started. Ed Smith and Jane Masterson, you're both accomplished professionals. Jane, you worked in the retail industry for 30 years.
Yes.
And Ed, you have several electrical engineering degrees. You're a scientist and an inventor, which sounds to have been an invaluable skill and the success you both have had in managing the myriad challenges associated with Jane's Parkinson's. Jane, you were diagnosed in 1997 in your early 50s and have had PD for about 25 years. Is that right?
That's correct.
About the same time, you both became partners in life as well as on the journey with Parkinson's. Tell me a bit about your beginnings that started on the Intercoastal Waterway.
Okay, just a little bit of background. Jane and I had known each other from the time we were in our 20s. Jane actually co-opted during college and met my mother and became friends with my mother, and she became part of my extended family. So we also had an interest in boating. We were both members of the United States Power Squadrons, and eventually we both became volunteers for the United States Coast Guard. So in right around the time she was diagnosed with Parkinson's, I decided I didn't need to work anymore. And I called her up one day and I said, Jane, I'm going to get on my 38-foot boat with my Siamese cat Nefertiti and going to Florida. Would you like to go? And she took a leave of absence. We spent 6 months on the boat, living on the boat, went down to Florida, fell in love with Punta Gorda, and became a couple and decided not to work anymore and just do volunteer work. And that's how our lives together started.
Wow, that's awesome. So you seem like you're a great match for each other. Going through your book, it sounds like you've grown because of each other. And by that, I mean, you've learned together on this journey with Parkinson's. And then what you're doing with that knowledge and experience to help others. With that, you started sharing your experiences in order to help people dealing with Parkinson's, providing presentations on cruise ships and various support groups, eventually leading you to co-authoring our Parkinson's Disease Instruction Manual. And I got a copy of it and I read through it, my husband and I did, and we found it very helpful. Can you talk a bit about the book? How did it come to be? How long it took you to write? Feedback you've received on it, and do you plan to write any more books about your journey with Parkinson's?
A lot of questions. Let me see if I can field some of those. Let me tell you how the book came about. We had given almost 20 presentations to various support groups. And at one of the presentations 2 years ago, a lady came up to me afterwards with tears in her eyes, hugged me, and said, you have just given my husband and I hope. We learned so much from you. You need to write this down and make it available, your knowledge, to more people. And that was what encouraged us to write the book. We started in September a year ago. We spent 3 months writing the book, and we truly worked every day on it. If you've not written a book, it's a lot of work. We were also blessed to have 3 editors. 2 of those 3 people with professional degrees in English. So what does the book cover? First, I want to tell you that the book is based on our personal experience. Up front, we are not physicians, okay? But we have 24/7 experience for 25 years with this disease. So in the book, we talk about how to get great medical care, just not good medical care, but great medical care. How to learn from others, how to manage drugs, exercise. Jane is one of those 30%. The primary symptom is freezing of gait. So how do you unfreeze? Electronic gadgets, the importance of speaking loudly and clearly, how to make the home Parkinson's friendly. We cover things in the bathroom, the bedroom, the kitchen, how to keep the care partner healthy. By the way, we use the term care partner. Caregivers are often paid people. or people that are there part of the time. A care partner is there 24/7. We even have a chapter on urinary incontinence. I think we may talk more about that later. Hospitalization, rehab, how to increase your mobility, driving, flying, vacationing. And we even end the book with a chapter on Parkinson's and disease in pets and pets. We actually have 25 links to additional sources of information and 38 pictures. I will comment the book has received excellent reviews on Amazon. That's where you get it. All but one write-up was 5 stars. And we have customers in 5 countries. And as of a few days ago, we were well over 500 books that have sold. Is that good? Don't know. We're pleased.
Right, right. I think it's good. I think it's sort of a one-stop shop because you provided a lot of information on a lot of different aspects of how Parkinson's affects you and how to sort of approach each of those aspects. So I found it a helpful resource. So I appreciate you writing it.
Thank you. That's our pay, as we like to say.
Jane, how are you these days? What's your day-to-day like? And in what ways are you living well with Parkinson's?
Well, I'm generally coping quite well. Right now, I'm dealing with having all my teeth pulled and getting a new set of teeth. So Ed will do most of the talking because I have a difficult time adjusting to this mouthful of gobbledygook. So, but I take each day at a time, and I have a big problem with multitasking. So I get myself involved in too many things at one time. That's been an issue with me. But other than that, I think we're getting out a lot, and we're definitely benefiting from the book and getting to know new people. People have called us yesterday from they involved with us in a year ago, and they called back to say that they've gone to Excel in Gainesville, and they're very pleased with it. So our days are filled with all kinds of Parkinson's activities.
It's interesting you talk about multitasking, and you reference it in your book with driving. But I too have, I feel like I don't multitask as well as I used to. I get easily overwhelmed. So that's some progression I'm seeing myself. So I can understand that.
Yes.
Very common early symptom is difficulty multitasking.
So in your book, you encourage creating lists of topics to discuss at doctor visits. Why is that important, and how can the care partner be of help with these visits?
Sure. Let me say that I think lists are important for all of us, regardless of whether we have Parkinson's or not. Before you go to your medical appointment, make a list of what the issues are that you want to talk with a doctor. Otherwise, you're likely to forget one, especially people with Parkinson's. The multitasking issue we already talked about. Sometimes there's some cognitive decline, so making a list is very helpful. We feel that it's imperative that the care partner attend all doctor's appointments, regardless how personal. Take notes, and I always assure that every issue that Jane needs to talk about is discussed, okay, and accurately, I might add. We actually had a case when Jane was having significant difficulty. And we went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Jane, how you doing?" She says, "I'm fine." I said, "No, you're not." I said, "I'm looking at nursing homes for this lady." I won't go into the detail, but that doctor brought us back from almost needing a nursing home and this was 10 years ago, to where she's back here and enjoying life. So had I not been there, I'm not sure the outcome would have been as successful.
Yeah, 10 years is not that long ago. So that's impressive that you've been able to stay at home and still manage at home together, the two of you together. So that's
Yes.
great. I also think it's helpful writing things down. Sometimes people are embarrassed talking to their doctor about something. So in some of my videos, I've mentioned write something down and hand it to the doctor if you want. If you don't feel comfortable talking about it and face to face out loud, then just like slip them a note or Another gentleman said, email the doctor ahead of your appointment and say, this is what I want to talk about. And then the doctor can bring it up and go about it that way.
They're great ideas. Let me make a further comment. After we've gone to her center of excellence, which we'll talk about later for Parkinson's, when we get home, I write a summary report. And that way we have that to refer back later. And if I have any questions, I send a copy to the medical people and say, is this truly what we concluded? And we have found that summary report comes in handy.
Yeah, that's good, because sometimes you can, as the patient, you can be so full of anxiety, you forget things. And then never mind, when you get home, you're just relieved to be done.
Yes, that's right.
Most, if not all of us, deal with time-limited appointments with our doctors, and you found more personalized, detailed care through concierge medicine or retainer medicine. While it sounds like it can be a bit expensive, the benefits may outweigh the cost for some, depending on the healthcare needs. Can you talk more about concierge medicine and how you feel you get more well-rounded care with it?
Be happy to do that, Fred. We were talking about it the other day, and Jane said if I had to give up just about everything else, I would not give up my concierge medicine. The first thing is, we're a little bit of a background. This is about 10 years ago. We went to a doctor who we greatly respected to have our annual physical covered by Medicare. That'll tell you how old we are. And he was embarrassed. He said, I'm only allowed to spend 20 minutes with you. Do you own a gun? Do you wear seatbelts? Anyway, when we left, we finally said, this didn't seem to be a very comprehensive examination. He subsequently decided to go into a hospital environment. We had to find a new doctor. And this is when we researched concierge medicine. We found an organization called Medical Doctors Versed in Prevention, MDVIP. What we like about it is we have an extensive yearly physical examination. I won't go into a lot of detail, but it takes several days, and the whole objective, find problems, fix problems before they're significant. The next thing is we get immediate care. We have never had to wait more than till the next day to see our doctor. And usually it's within a few hours. Jane had an issue a week ago, called the doctor Monday morning. Immediately the doctor had her go get tests. The doctor saw her at 1 o'clock, called us at 5 o'clock with test results, called at 9 o'clock, and I had to wake Jane up because she wanted me to measure her oxygen, blood pressure, and pulse rate. Now, you don't get that from most doctors because they just have too many patients to do that. We also have our doctor's email, cell phone, home phone. We can reach her anytime. She also has hospital privileges, which today a lot of doctors do not. And also we find our doctor knows the best specialist. Excuse the term, she beats them up a little bit to get them to see us more quickly than otherwise. So it has been very satisfying for us, and we think it's done a lot to keep us healthy.
Good. Yeah, it sounds beneficial. It is hard to get everything covered that we want to talk about sometimes when you have 15 to 20 minutes. I know my appointments, I feel sort of rushed. It's like I'm taking up too much of her time. So it does sound beneficial.
And we never are rushed. In fact, if our appointment is 10 o'clock, we walk in at 10 o'clock, we're taken immediately. There's usually nobody in the waiting room. How do they do this? She only has 500 clients maximum versus a typical GP has over 2,000.
That's a lot of patients to cover.
And one further comment, and why I think this is a good idea with somebody in Parkinson's disease. Later, we'll probably talk about all the various things that you can experience as the disease progresses. And you need a good anchor person, your primary care physician, because you're going to see them a lot.
That's good to know. Why is keeping a documented history of our medical information, like insurance and medications, important? Okay,
first thing, I like to call it the story. I take a lot of medical courses, and I took one once online, I might add, and the doctor said, I want to hear the patient's story. If you come to me with a problem, tell me everything, regardless of how intimate it might be. I can usually make a preliminary diagnosis from the story. Then I poke and prod, and then I do a couple tests, and then I'm normally able to confirm whether I was correct. So what we have learned, when you go to the doctor, if it's a new doctor, they want you to fill out all this information. We keep it all on computer. We print out a copy. We go to a new doctor. We say, we're not filling all this out. The receptionist attaches it to the form. And not only is everything there, but it's accurate. Okay. And the doctor doesn't have to try and understand your handwriting, because a person with Parkinson's disease often has handwriting issues. So that is why we take, and that was one of the first symptoms Jane had,
Exactly.
was small handwriting.
Mhm.
So that is why it's important that you take your entire medical history and you make sure you tell your story.
Right. Yeah, it's I don't know, amusing to me when I have to go into these appointments and they give me forms and say, fill this out. I'm like, have you seen my handwriting?
Yes, and they gave you 5 minutes to do it.
Right.
Yes.
So in your book, you reference the Parkinson's Foundation Center for Excellence that includes specialized care teams of treating neurological disorders. Can you talk about these facilities more?
Be happy to, because this was a breakthrough in managing Parkinson's disease for us. And in the book, we talk about that, and we talk about how we got good medical care. But during one of the sessions we had with a support group in Punta Gorda, somebody said, if you have Parkinson's disease, you should go to a center of excellence. I said, well, what is that? A center of excellence definition are healthcare institutions which supply exceptionally high concentrations of expertise and related resources centered in a particular medical area. And for a Parkinson's Center of Excellence, usually under one roof, you will find movement disorder neurologists, deep brain stimulator surgeons, deep brain stimulator programming specialists, physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychologists, neurological psychiatrists, neurological ophthalmologists, even people that specialize in injecting Botox, which is a therapy used in Parkinson's disease, and even perhaps a urologist. And we go to the Norman Fixell Institute for Neurological Diseases, located in Gainesville, Florida. We think it's one of the best in the world. And truly, all of these experts are under one roof and they talk to one another. They don't exchange faxes, et cetera. And once we began to go to a center of excellence, we decided we were truly getting great medical care. And that organization has saved Jane from a nursing home 3 different occasions. So we can't speak highly enough about getting affiliated with a center of excellence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we hear a lot about building your care team because of all the different symptoms that you can experience with Parkinson's. So it's nice to hear that they have under one roof all these different specialists. So you're not having to go all over the place to visit these specialists. And they do have centers around the world, correct?
Correct. In fact, you can go to the Parkinson's Foundation website, and they actually list the Center of Excellence. I think there's about 35 in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
We very much recommend it. If you live out in the country and you may have difficulty finding a movement disorder neurologist, you can deal with a regular neurologist, and maybe you go to a Center of Excellence twice a year, get on an airplane, go wherever,
Right.
and in that organization communicate with your doctor in your town for help when you need it outside of the normal appointment periods.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that for a number of years.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to travel. I go to a university hospital to see my movement disorder specialist, and it's a few hours away, but it's just twice a year. And I like the facility and I like the doctor, so I'm willing to make the drive.
So I'll just make a further comment, because some of the audience may not know this. It's really imperative that you try to develop a relationship with a movement disorder neurologist. That is someone who has 2 additional years of training specifically in movement disorders. And in fact, where we go, FixL, that's where they train movement disorder neurologists.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. What qualifies these facilities as a center of excellence?
It is really having all of these specialties essentially under one roof or geographically connected to one another. And the Parkinson's Foundation, I believe, has a criteria for rating and deciding whether they're added to the list as a center of excellence.
Okay. So it's important that each of us builds our care team. It sounds like they have the highly trained specialists, and you get very thorough exams. So Jane, you mentioned the deep brain stimulation surgeons that are there. So you had deep brain stimulation in 2010?
Yes, I had one done in 2010 and the other one done in 2011.
Okay. Tell me a bit about that experience and like what you had to do pre-op, the surgery itself, how long did it take? I understand that you're awake during the surgery.
Well, they claim you're awake. I don't remember the awake part, but I'm guessing I did answer to questions, which is what they do. They're looking to see if they've attached the leads to the proper place in your brain to make it beneficial for you. But let me go back to the beginning. I had to qualify for the surgery by having my own neurologist recommend that I get the surgery. I had to go to the surgeon who would do the surgery and see if he thought that I was a candidate. And finally, I had to go to a psychologist and spend a day and a half taking psychology exams or questions. And what they're doing is they're trying to decide whether you have cognitive problems, that you might be a problem with having that with your DBS. So I passed all those, and then I went and I had the first one done, the one side done, and then they wait till that one settles in, and then they do the second side. Now, some doctors do it different ways, but this is the way this doctor did it at the time.
Oh, okay.
So, and then after it's in and it's settled down, and then you go and you have it fine tuned. It's an electrical device that somebody who's been trained in this unit has to fine tune it to give you the maximum benefit from the unit.
Okay. So you found it helpful, the DBS?
Yes, it takes away. It's a tremor reducer. Reduces the tremors.
Okay,
So
but not
it's beneficial.
but
It
it
also
doesn't do much for the non-motor symptoms, is that right?
No.
it can reduce stiffness to some degree,
Yeah.
and it
Okay.
can also help with dyskinesia, which of course is drug related. But many of the other symptoms it does not have much impact on. But for people with significant tremor, it can be like magic.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I have heard that. I've talked to several people who have had it, and I've heard both sides, pros and cons. So I think it's definitely something that requires a lot of research and a very personal decision for each person, a lot of thought that needs to go into it. But the people that are for it have said it's a game changer for them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Incontinence issues. So they are quite common, and I was glad to see that section in your book. I'm sure some people feel uncomfortable talking about it, but it is a good topic that many can benefit from. I try to remind others that they're not alone in this journey, and while we're all unique, we're not that unique. So this is a common issue, and I encourage others to talk to their doctor about it. There are several items on the market, including external catheters for men referred to as condom catheters or Texas catheters, which are worn like a condom. In your book, you talk about the Pure Wick external female catheter, and I'm curious about that because I have seen commercials for it. I've watched them with my mom, and we've both been like, well, how do you use that? Is it comfortable? So Jane, if you could talk a bit about your experience with it, how you use it, if it's comfortable, effective, and that sort of thing.
Oh, I couldn't get rid of it at all. It's been definitely was a game changer. And how I found out about it was one of my caregivers said to me that she was taking care of a lady, and she had this gadget, and I went, okay, fine, so much for that. But then she said, Jane, you really have to try this. I'm not sure how you do this because So I said, okay, I'm tired of listening to you talk about this gadget. I'm gonna call and find out about it. So I called up and found out about it, and I said, well, you know, it's a bit pricey. Costs about $800, but it's definitely it's worth its weight in gold. It's a device. There's a machine that starts to pull the liquid out of your body. But what you do is you put a gadget that's like a tampon between your legs. And I only wear it at night. Now you could wear it during the day if you needed to, but I only wear it at night because I don't want to drag this thing around, and I'm mobile during the day. So, but I use it at night, and I put it on, and I just go to bed, pull it up under my panties with a pad under it, and then it takes it does its thing. When it senses that there's liquid in there, it draws it down the tube and into the container. And it's truly a piece of equipment that you can't live without.
Okay.
We recently had a lady come up to me and said, we read your book. Do you realize you saved our marriage? I said, what? She says, I had a problem wetting the bed all the time. And I learned about Pure Wick, and we no longer have that issue. And it really made a tremendous improvement on our life as well.
Yeah.
Good. So you said how much it costs. Is it easy to get? Do you need anything from the doctor to get it? Where do you only order it through TV, the ads?
You go. I went to a place in Florida here that sells medical supplies, and there's no discount on it. There's no discount by buying it at Amazon or anything, because you have to buy obviously repeats of the gadget that goes next to your body. The machine is a self-unit set machine. And also you can buy two versions of it. One is just electrical, and it just has to be plugged in all the time. But another one has a built-in part that you can operate it without a battery pack in it. But you can't add it on. You have to buy it initially with the battery pack, or not initially with the battery pack. But it's definitely something I would never be able to live without now that I know about it.
And it's easy to clean.
Oh yes, it's easy to clean, and you don't have to get up at night. There's no getting up. Once you go to bed, you're in the bed, because you don't have the sense. I was up and down all the time before. It's not good sleep. So by having this now, this saves me. When I get up in the morning, then I clean it, and I'm on my way.
Yeah, that's great. Not only is that good because it can help prevent falling. I hear that's a common issue, falling, trying to go to the bathroom at night, but also like here in Virginia, it's cold. I don't want to get up. I've got my electric blanket going, and I don't want to get up at night. So.
That's right.
So, and Jane, in chapter 13, you talk about using outside help for household chores, and having someone come in as a companion to engage in activities with you. And that gives Ed an opportunity to have time to himself. What are some activities you and your companion do, and why is that time apart from Ed important for you?
Well, number one is that this person comes in and just makes sure that the machine is cleaned out every day. It does I take a lot of pills, both prescription pills and vitamins. So she fills boxes up and stages those for me, and keeps an inventory of it's now time we need more of this or more of this. So she does that. She'll take me to the bank. We go out and have lunch. We go get our hair cut. We go get our nails done, this kind of thing. And so she's someone who doesn't have a medical background per se, but she's had enough experience in this field that she knows a lot of things to do. She keeps lists of things. She makes phone calls if need be to make sure that the doctors know that we're due to come there for an appointment tomorrow or whatever. Sometimes she goes to the doctor with me when I need to go, and we have a conflict here. But other than that, she does that, and I have a backup for her when she needs to have time off, and she comes for about 3 hours a day, 3 or 4 hours a day.
Oh, that's nice.
We then have a person who's a housekeeper, call it what you will, the old-fashioned way of calling it, a cleaning lady. But she's a very fine lady, and she comes here and she spends about 5 hours once a week doing the wash, vacuuming, dusting, all that kind of stuff. So she's excellent too. And that's the help that we have at the moment, and it works fine. We've really been able to find people that were really good, so that was a benefit to us.
Right, right. It must be a relief too, for you, Ed, knowing there's somebody qualified, it sounds like, that's spending time with her. So if she's out and about.
You are correct. I really do not like to be away from home if Jane is on her own. Maybe for a little while, but not an extended period. And this way I can go out and do things for 3 or 4 hours and not worry about her. I know she's in good hands.
And it's nice too, Jane, I'm sure, to get a focus off of Parkinson's. I'm finding it can be all consuming sometimes. So it must be nice to just have that distraction.
Oh yes, it is. It's good, and we have similar interests, and so we have a good time together too. So it's fun.
That's good. And Ed, let's talk about, you mentioned the caregiver care partner syndrome. And you mentioned that in the book. What are some of the symptoms one needs to watch out for, and what do you suggest is the best way to mitigate this?
Sure. First thing, this is well known. Okay, people that are care partners 24/7 often develop anxiety, depression. They can get irritable. By the way, guys and gals, you don't want to be irritable with somebody with Parkinson's. It makes them worse, not better. After a while, you get feeling tired and just plain run down. It is very common for people that are care partners to have difficulty sleeping, especially if they're up in the middle of the night for various reasons. As it begins to build up, you overreact to minor nuisances, and sometimes your health actually declines. In fact, it is well documented that people that are care partners often die before the person they're taking care of. Now, there is some good news, and I did a study on this recently because I ran a focus group to come up with ways for people to lower the stress as a care partner. But if you can find ways to get away, to take a break, to lower your stress, then this risk of significant medical problems can go away. This being under constant stress can affect the cardiovascular system, and people don't realize it. And I find very few care partners take the time to get away. I do. Number one, believe it or not, I enjoy grocery shopping. I now do all the cooking. I had to learn how to cook, and I tell Jane, don't bother me in my kitchen. But I actually enjoy grocery shopping. It is a break from Parkinson's. I attend club meetings. We have over 3,000 clubs in the villages where we live. So there's a club for everything. I actually enjoy putting together material for Parkinson's presentations, which I give a lot of. I have something most people don't have. I have a full-size flight simulator in the house. So I can get in the front end of this airplane and go flying for a while.
Wow.
And believe it or not, one of the things I find really de-stresses me is just taking a long walk in the country. And so when Jane's partner is, when her partner is here, I will go out walking, and I find that really is helpful to me. I also get away occasionally for more than just hours. I find very few people do this. I go on cruises. Unfortunately, a lot of them now I do by myself. And probably 4 times a year, I fly up north to see my family. So for 3 or 4 days. And fortunately, Jane's companion comes and stays with her when I'm gone. So that has worked out quite well for us.
That's great. That's a nice break for you too. It seems like as a care partner, you can lose your sense of self.
Yes.
So I don't think it's selfish to make time for you. You know, you need to prioritize, make yourself a priority sometimes.
Well, Jane realizes that if something happens to me, her next stop is a nursing home. Okay. And that's true for so many people that are care partners. So you have to keep the care partner healthy for the good of the person with Parkinson's disease.
That's right. We need you. You can't go anywhere,
You
Ed.
do. You do. It's good to be needed.
So this is a good segue into talking about support groups. I personally enjoy interacting with others with Parkinson's, so I was excited to talk to you. I was diagnosed in the pandemic, so any interaction I've had is really just virtual, but I still get excited to actually talk one-on-one with my people.
Yes.
But it's nice to compare notes. It's helpful too, I think, knowing I'm not the only one going through something. So reading your book, I could relate to you, like the handwriting was one of my early symptoms, that sort of thing. So when did you first start meeting with support groups, but not as presenters? And have you benefited from, or how have you benefited from support groups as a person with Parkinson's and as a care partner over the years?
Sure. We actually began attending support groups in 2010 when we lived in Punta Gorda, Florida. We found out there was a Parkinson's support group and we started to attend there. We also had a home in Loudon, Tennessee, and we got involved with support groups up there.
Mm-hmm.
We learned a tremendous amount from the people that had been in Parkinson's therapy for quite a while. First thing is we learned about movement disorder neurologists. We didn't know that there was a specialty called movement disorder. Mm-hmm. We also learned about the Center of Excellence, which made a profound effect on our life. We actually moved to the Villages, Florida, to be somewhat close to Gainesville, where the Center of Excellence is. But more importantly, we have 10 support groups in the Villages for Parkinson's disease.
Oh, wow.
Some of those are focused on exercise, some are focused on education, some are for women with Parkinson's only, and so forth. Some meet weekly, some meet twice a month, some just once a month. Not only have we learned a great deal, but we have expanded our circle of friends. In fact, many of our friends now are couples where one of them has Parkinson's disease. So I would say get involved with care groups. And if you don't have one in your area, start one.
Okay,
Jane?
That's good. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think we benefited definitely, guys. Every day I say to myself, oh, geez, I wish we'd moved here before, long ago, because I mean, not that we met nice people, but people are always the hardest to leave when you move someplace. But it's just been wonderful here with so many people with the same problems and gathering new people. We have a group that is an educational group that's every time we meet, every 2 weeks, there are at least 6 or 8 new people. Now they're sometimes they're just winter snowbirds. Sometimes they're people who've just moved here, or some people who say, well, I got diagnosed last week or last month. So they're wondering how to deal with their problems. So when I was diagnosed, I said, how do you spell Parkinson's? I didn't know anybody that had it. I had no idea what I was up against. So I had a clean brain, and I kept going, and we just kept getting more information and more information. Some of these people have no idea how to deal with what they have now, as well as what they're headed towards.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I've learned a lot just from reading your book and now talking to you. Like you mentioned, the Centers for Excellence, I had no idea that they existed. So things like that, I think it's helpful to talk to others and share information from experiences. So it's beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So sleep, how does that go for both of you? Ed, you're in a separate bedroom now. How did that come about?
Okay. It's about 10 years ago, I was having some health issues, and I went to my doctor, who was also Jane's doctor. And after he got done listening to my story, he said, I know what your problem is. You're spending 8 hours in bed, but you're being constantly awakened by Jane because Jane has REM sleep disorder. Mm-hmm. And REM sleep disorder is very, very common with people with Parkinson's disease. Jane would suddenly, in the middle of the night, scream, or she talked in foreign tongue. I don't know what foreign tongue it was, but she constantly awakened me. And if you do not get good, solid sleep, and by the way, you need to be in REM sleep mode periodically, you don't benefit from good sleep. So he said, Ed, sleep in a separate bedroom. Let's see what happens. Within days, I was back to my normal health. And that's when we concluded we need to sleep in separate bedrooms, and we have for many years. Now, Jane is able to get a hold of me. We have multiple ways she can get a hold of me if she needs to in the middle of the night. But that's how sleeping in bedrooms came about. And a lot of people don't want to talk about that. But when you really get to talk to people with Parkinson's, you'll find a number of people that have realized they need to sleep in separate rooms.
Mhm. Yeah, sleep deprivation can wreak havoc. So
It does, absolutely.
yeah, it plays a big role. Sleep plays a big role in your overall health. You reference a noisemaker for background ambient sounds, which is something I also find helpful. Jane, do you find it helpful, and are there certain sounds you prefer over others?
Well, I don't use one because I have, I don't need one. Now, maybe Ed does need one. I know he uses one sometimes on cruise ships, or sometimes we have some outside noises that come in. But I don't tend to need one. I sleep quite well. And now that I have my urinary tract problems solved, once I go to bed, I'm in bed for the duration. So that's worked out fine for me.
That's good. My sleep is, I'll go through cycles where I feel I don't get enough sleep, and then there's times I'm just wide awake, I just can't sleep. But we'll turn on the Alexa sound noises.
Yes.
And usually I like the rain, thunderstorm sounds. But I was playing with my grandson with the Alexa, and she was playing clock sounds. And just sitting there with my grandson, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to use that at night. Just hearing that.
One thing I learned, by the way, we have Alexa all over the house, okay? And I have one in my bedroom, and I have learned, I will say, Alexa, play music to sleep by. And then I will say, Alexa, turn off the music in 30 minutes. Okay, Alexa, you can be quiet. She heard her name. And I find it very useful, because normally I'm asleep in 10 minutes, and then 30 minutes later, the music goes away.
Yeah, we have one in our room too, and I think it's helpful.
Alexa, stop. She's playing music.
Now she's eager to get in on this.
Yes. I will make one further comment. It's rather personal, but sleeping in separate bedrooms is not ideal for one's relationship with their partner. Okay. And guess what, guys? You may have to schedule intimacy so it doesn't go away, because it's a very important part of your life. Right.
So in your book, you mentioned the importance of an advocate for the patient during hospital stays. What are some of the challenges you faced, and how you overcame them to ensure Jane was provided adequate care?
Well, Jane had a fall and ended up in the hospital for 3 days. Fortunately, she was basically not injured, but it did not prove very effective for her. What you find is the hospitals in general may not have people experienced in dealing with somebody with Parkinson's disease. They don't realize how important it is that your drugs be taken on time. Our rule is plus or minus 10 minutes on taking drugs. I would encourage people to go to the Parkinson's Foundation website and look up a Wear in Care hospital kit. And I recommend you get one. We have one sitting right over here, ready to go if we need it. And not only does it provide information to the medical staff, but me as a care partner, I can sit down and I can brief all of the nurses, all of the people that get involved in Jane's care, and make sure they know about things specific to Parkinson's disease. We also had another issue that after Jane was released from the hospital, she was released to a rehab nursing home. And it became apparent very quickly she was not getting the appropriate level of care. So what I encourage and what I did, I asked to meet with the managing director, and I very politely pointed out they were in violation of their own corporate policies. They had not prepared a written care plan, and they were either going to do that immediately or I was going to corporate, but you do this very politely. They were not administering her drugs on time, so they called in the staff physician. He evaluated Jane and he said, this lady is cognitive capable of taking her own drugs. and she actually took her own drugs while she was in this
Good.
facility. So the point of the matter is the hospital staff are overwhelmed today. They have to
Yes.
deal with all sorts of diseases, and there's nothing like having somebody looking out for your loved one and being polite but proactive.
Yeah, sometimes in the hospitals, you have to be your own best advocate, or the care partner has to do that, be a little assertive, because they are short-staffed and overwhelmed. About the Aware and Care bag, I got one myself, and one of the things they included was an ID bracelet,
Yes.
which I will wear when we travel. If for whatever reason my husband and I get separated, I have that on me. So I think
Excellent.
it's a helpful resource.
Well, I'll make a comment on the Aware and Care kit. I looked at everything in there and I said, well, suppose I have to go to the hospital. So I went into Amazon, bought a little kit, and I've got all of my information in that sitting next to Jane's. So if I have to go to the hospital, I have the equivalent of a Aware and Care kit for me, even though
That's
I don't
great.
have Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, so you have everything in one place. So that's good.
Yes. And also in Jane's kit and my kit, we have some of the drugs that we need to take. So
Right.
that when you get to the hospital and the pharmacy in the hospital doesn't have the right drugs, you at least have enough to get you through a period of time.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea. You mentioned the rehabilitation care that sometimes that Jane needed and sometimes follows a hospital stay. And then there's the difference between skilled nursing facilities versus rehabilitation hospitals. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I sure will, because it's very current, because at one of our Parkinson's support meetings a couple of weeks ago, we had somebody come in from an Aware and Care, from a rehabilitation hospital. Okay, here's the difference. If you go into a skilled nursing facility that may have rehab, normally they provide 1 hour a day maximum of physical therapy or occupational therapy. If you go into a rehabilitation hospital, they give a minimum of 3 hours a day of OT, PT, plus socialization skills and so forth. So the bottom line is you get far more intensive therapy that you get in a skilled nursing facility. And what you have to do is go online and search for nearby rehabilitation hospitals and find out where the nearest one is. And we very much recommend it. It really can make a difference in the outcome. Jane's experience in a nursing home for 10 days with 1 hour a day of rehab was not positive. When she got out, she wasn't that much better than when she went in.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know the difference myself. So again, you know, your book is a great resource of information. So it's helpful. Regarding driving, you talk about that in the book. I've talked to a couple people who rail against giving up driving, and they associate it with losing their independence. But you talk about multitasking that, you know, we referenced earlier. Was it a difficult decision, Jane, to give up driving? And what do you both feel is important for someone with Parkinson's to consider when deciding when to surrender those keys?
I had no trouble because I was afraid I was going to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
I just was, I had holes in my nails had put holes in my hands from grabbing the wheel so tight that I just was very nervous. And I said, this is too much. I can't deal with this. But I've seen people who've had to lock up the keys in a safe if the person could not lift and get out of the house. I mean, those things we've seen from one to the other. But and they're obviously all the time they're in their golf carts here, which is another bad thing, that people are driving golf carts as well as cars in our neighborhood. So it's a difficult thing to see, but I'm very happy that I did, because everybody else is safe now.
Let me comment that few people realize the financial ramifications of somebody with Parkinson's disease driving. I like to tell people, don't ask your doctor if you should drive. Ask your lawyer. And during part of my career, I did expert witness work in federal court. I've seen how the court system works. And I like people to understand that if you're in an accident and somebody is killed or injured, regardless of whether you're at fault, but you're sued and you end up in court, they get you up on the stand, they say, do you have Parkinson's? And you say, well, yes. And then they get an expert that helps the jury understand that people with Parkinson's cannot multitask. It's one of the fundamental issues with Parkinson's. And then they get an expert up there that explains that driving a car is a highly multitasking activity. And when you're all done, I'm sorry, you're probably going to lose. Okay. And the problem is it can put your own financial resources at risk.
Right.
Plus the fact, how do you live with the fact that you've killed or injured somebody?
Right.
So recommend you give up driving sooner rather than later. We find it's much more difficult for men because it's a masculine issue, give up my driving. But it's probably what's best for everybody.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely food for thought. You have me thinking, because one of the times I was at the movement disorder specialist the last time, I did say I was having trouble multitasking, and now reading that in your book, it's just got the gears going. So
Yes.
I don't get on
I
our
understand.
highway too much anymore, but I will putz around town because I know the roads and I know when to go out and it's not as busy, that sort of thing. But the highways I avoid anymore. So it's a little overwhelming.
Sure.
Yes, I understand.
On the subject of a handicap parking permit, I recently applied for my placard, although I don't feel that I need it yet. Someone suggested that it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So what are your thoughts on getting a handicap parking placard or license plate sooner rather than later?
We would say get it sooner rather than later, but only use it when you really need it. And the reason for that is now Jane is in a wheelchair all the time. So we have to find a place where we can get her in and out of the car, get the wheelchair, get it up alongside the car. So handicap spots are imperative that we have access to those. And we get very upset when we see somebody pull into a handicap spot, put their card out. I like to say, get out of the car, do 2 front flips, run in the store and come back. Okay.
Right.
And that's inappropriate. We only use it when we need it. I never use it as a care partner. And if Jane is with me and she's not getting out of the car, I will not go into a handicap spot. We only go into a handicap spot when she's getting in and out of the car. So that's the bottom line. Get it, but use it only when you need it.
Okay, that's helpful. Talking about traveling, I'm full of wanderlust myself, and I enjoy seeing and doing, and I want to do as much as I can while I physically can. But I know at some point the active adventures is going to be a little bit challenging. So you talk about cruising. How did you get into cruising? And do you find that there are some cruise lines that are more accommodating than others?
Sure. First thing, Jane and I, of course, were into boating for years, and we did cruising on our own vessel. But eventually got to the point where it was too difficult for Jane to get on and off of our big boat. So we started to go on cruise ships. We have over 500 days on cruise ships.
Wow.
Okay. We absolutely love it. We think it's an ideal venue for a couple where one person has Parkinson's disease. You unpack once, you can do your own things during the day, get together for meals. The care partner doesn't have to fix the meals. There's great entertainment and so forth. Now, we've been on all sorts of cruise ships, from the really large ones to very small ones, and we have found all of them to be quite accommodating, helping people with a disability like Parkinson's disease. One very important thing, if you have to have a mobility scooter or a wheelchair, you need to understand that you have to have a handicap room, because you're not allowed to park these devices out in the hallway. Okay. Getting a handicap room on cruise ships is challenging. They don't have that many of them. So you often have to book a year and a half ahead of time.
Okay.
We've actually gone online. One time we went online to Royal Caribbean, and you were able to search for ships that had an open handicap room. And we've gone on cruises only because they had an open handicap room and we went ahead and booked it. But it's been great. But there's another thing I need to mention. It's really, really important, and that is get insurance.
Okay.
You want to get travel insurance, not so much to protect the loss of $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 that you're paying for the trip, but in the event you have to be medically evacuated, because that can get exceedingly expensive, certainly well over $100,000 in some cases, depending on where you are in the world. Now, for the last roughly since COVID, Jane has not been able to cruise with me. It's been too challenging. But we have arranged a Parkinson's cruise on Royal Caribbean in April. And we've hired Jane's companion to come with us just to help take care of Jane. And we're trying to go back cruising, the two of us, because I cruise a lot on my own and it's lonely. I always meet interesting people. It's not the same as having her with me.
Sure, sure. Well, that's fun. I'm sure you'll have a great time. Is there any suggestions or advice you would have for people who are taking a trip out of the country?
Well, the insurance I talked about is absolutely imperative. If you are well along in your Parkinson's journey, I would say you may want to reconsider whether you want to go all over the world, because you are going to be out of touch with the first-class medical facilities that we're so used to. What we have done in the last 5 years, we've done a lot of cruising in the U.S. We take river cruises in U.S. waters. We're never very far from a U.S. hospital, U.S. medical care. We're covered by Medicare. Remember, if you go outside of the country, your medical insurance may not cover you. So that's how we coped with it. Or in the case of April, we're just going down to the Caribbean, where, in all honesty, we're a short airplane back home if we need to do it.
Yeah, that's good. So my husband and I, as I mentioned, we found your book very informative and helpful. I really appreciate the attitude you both have with accepting what is and just trying to stay positive and encourage positivity from others. In closing, what are one or two things you both would offer someone just diagnosed, starting this journey with Parkinson's, as well as to someone stepping into that care partner role, something that would have benefited you early on knowing?
Great. We have three answers to that. I'll go ahead and give them. Jane can chime in. First thing is educate yourself. There are many good books and references available. Check out the various foundations, the Michael J. Fox Foundation, the Parkinson's Foundation. There's a foundation called Neuro Challenges, primarily focused in Florida, just to name a few. They are rich sources of information. Educate yourself. The more you know, the better you can cope with this disease, the better you can communicate with your medical staff. Second thing, get affiliated with a Parkinson's Disease Center of Excellence early as possible. Some people we talk to said, I'll wait till the disease gets worse. I can give you a very good example. Of the two ways you can die, most people do not die of Parkinson's, they die with Parkinson's. Well, one of the major causes of death is aspiration pneumonia. Okay, and that's because the muscles that control swallowing don't operate correctly. And a Parkinson's Center of Excellence is most likely going to run swallowing tests early on, and redo that periodically so that that can be dealt with before it becomes a serious issue. Go to the Parkinson's Foundation and search for Parkinson's Centers of Excellence. And the last thing is join a support group. Learn, contribute, make new friends. If you don't have one in your area, start one. Jane? Anything further?
No, that's really, I mean, we've just gained so many things about the people and so on that we really have learned so much, and we've learned from them as well. And I can see that at this point we're probably about to maybe start another book, or a book that's version 2, because there's lots of categories that we didn't think about, or we were just trying to barrel along with the ones we were working on at the time. So I think that there's a lot to be had said and learned from all these people, and And we hope we know the cruise is going to be great. And some people are not quite sure what to do in a cruise because they've never been on one before, and others have been on one, but they haven't been on it for a while. So we're looking forward to that too.
And of course, you could always move to the Villages, Florida. We estimate there are 1,500 people with Parkinson's disease in the Villages,
God.
Florida. We have 135,000 residents in the Villages, Florida, with 10 support groups, and we're an hour away from a center of excellence. I don't know where it could be a better place to live in the country, and the weather is great. So that's my closing.
Yeah. Yeah, I envy you with our 30-some degree weather here today. So
it's 83 degrees right now.
Wow, I'm jealous.
And low humidity.
Oh, that's nice.
Yes.
So that about wraps everything up. I have information on your book that I'm adding to the community page of the YouTube channel. I also have on the About page, I have some links to some of the organizations that you referenced.
Great.
I'm also going to include the link to your book in Amazon for anybody who's interested in finding it. I've truly enjoyed chatting with you both and appreciate you sharing your stories in an effort to help others live well with this disease. So thank you so much.
And it was a pleasure meeting you.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.